Thank you for joining us for this second hour of The World Tonight. I'm Naira Huck.
Good evening, I'm Kelly Wright. We begin this hour with the National Football League and national attention on this weekend's Super Bowl 56. But much of the talk this week has not been about the big game itself, but rather the long game, the league's diversity and inclusion, or lack thereof. Former Miami Dolphins coach Brian Flores' class action lawsuit against the NFL and 3 of its teams accuses the league of racial discrimination, reflected in the scarcity of black head coaches. Although there were 9 head coaching openings this offseason, so far, only 1 went to a black coach. Lovie Smith of the Houston Texans, Mike McDaniel, the Miami Dolphins' new coach, is multiracial. So now Flores' replacement, Mike McDaniel, has raised eyebrows with a comment that suggests maybe the intense conversation about race and the NFL isn't all that important. My dad is black, so whatever you want to call it, he states in an ESPN interview. He goes on to say, my background opens my eyes a little bit. I don't have any real experience with racism, but I know my mom experienced it when she married my dad. I know my dad experienced it and that it's in my family. I guess that makes me a human being that can identify with other people's problems. Now, McDaniel's hiring was viewed as a plus for coaches of color in the discussion about equal opportunity in the NFL. But McDaniel's self-identification as a human being puts a different spin on the conversation for some.
Joining us now is Elizabeth Ann Atkins, a multiracial author and co-owner of Two Sisters Writing and Publishing. Thank you for joining us. You've written extensively on the subject of racial identity, and it's at a moment when it would serve the NFL well for Coach Mike McDaniel to call himself multiracial, biracial. How do you react to his self-description as a human being whose dad is black?
Yeah, I think that we're all entitled to self-identify. However, race is more than a color. Race is a consciousness. And when you step into an environment that has dismal disparities for Black people in leadership, it's a responsibility to make change. So here's how I operate. As a multiracial woman who looks white, I use that privilege of looking white to get through the door, to sit at the table. And when you get to the table, that's when you can flex the consciousness and make change. But I think it's lovely to say human being, but George Floyd wasn't treated like a human being, and Colin Kaepernick didn't take a knee because people were being treated like human beings. We all have an obligation because racism is a poison on the collective of humanity. And we, as mixed race people, serve as a bridge. We are a bridge to communicate messaging in a way that can be received on both sides to inspire action for the change that we urgently, desperately need in America.
Elizabeth, you're so right about the conversation that we desperately need in America. And when it comes to multi-race, historically, as you know, a lot of blacks who look and could pass for white indeed did that. And they were able, as you stated, to get into the boardrooms, to get the employment. Yet there's this clause that was made during slavery and Jim Crow that if you have one drop of black in you, you're considered a black citizen. So for Mr. McDaniel to say I'm a human being, I get what he's saying, but he doesn't understand the real history and the pain that causes or the harm that causes for black and brown people who still have to deal with the color of their skin.
Yeah, absolutely. So my point is that he's entering a realm in a very powerful leadership position where he has the power to change minds and inspire action. And this environment is highlighted by the fact that there's now a lawsuit by his predecessor. I mean, it couldn't be more blatant. And Super Bowl Sunday weekend is the time, it's front and center for the whole world. I mean, imagine the conversations that could be occurring instead of all of this conversation about human being or biracial or what does it mean. This could be time to really be a lightning rod for change.
It's so interesting to see different players, different leaders in football, sports in general, to have to get up to the podium and address conversations that are fraught and picked over by millions of people. That said, the job is the sport, but they also know that that's the environment you walk into. So was Mike McDaniel prepared for the sport, but not for that moment? Or is this what he is and how he wants to deal with the issue?
Mm-hmm. I think that I think there should have been some prepping, because in the volatile racial environment, it would come up and it would be all over social media, and it would be at press conferences, and so many articles are being written about this, questioning his statements at the press conference. So I think there should have been some preparation for him to be armed with an explanation to everybody about his perspective, especially in the environment of lawsuits and the tremendously dismal statistics about Black coaches in the NFL. It's a conversation that he has so much power to make positive, powerful change with. So I really feel like I wish all this energy could be put toward finding solutions to the problem.
And therein is part of the answer, finding solutions, having the time to talk about it in a real visceral way to really understand where we're coming from. Elizabeth Ann Atkins, so good of you to join us, multiracial author and co-owner of Two Sisters Writing and Publishing. Thanks again for coming on and sharing your perspective.
A super